So, what are we doing today? Who knows? Joseph, this is the last day of Genesis. How do you feel about that? Are you tired of Genesis, or are you excited that it's over, or what? Some of you are thinking, thank goodness Genesis is over. I'm tired of hearing about Abraham, Joseph, Isaac, Jacob. Who's your favorite? Everyone's favorite of the four is Joseph, right? Everyone's favorite. It's easy. Who's your second favorite? Huh? Yeah, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Who's your second favorite? Jacob. Jacob's your second favorite? More than Abraham? You know, I will say Jacob, I like him more now. You know, before going through Genesis, he was my least favorite because he hurt his brother so much. But I think I like him more than Isaac now. Isaac, who just gives the birthright for food, and Jacob is such a story about us, about our sin and wrestling with God with our sin and getting the forgiveness. But Joseph, I don't know if I can relate to Joseph. Joseph is like Jesus, you know. He's like Jacob, but like in reverse. So he's forgiving his brothers, you know. Okay. Not yet. Okay, so today will be the last day of Genesis. Okay, chapter 42. So what's going on in Egypt right now? There's a severe what? Huh? Famine. No food, right? And so this is another way that Jacob is like Jesus, right? Jesus is the bread of life, right? And no one has life without eating Jesus. Joseph is the only one in the land around Egypt and in Egypt that has bread. So you have to go to Joseph to live. So it's another way that Joseph is like Jesus, right? When Jacob hears that there's grain available in Egypt, he sends 10 of his brothers to buy grain. So he sends 10 of his sons to buy grain. He does not send Benjamin. Why do you think Jacob does not send Benjamin? The answer is pretty obvious, right? Why does Jacob not send Benjamin? Right. Why doesn't he not send Judah? Why is it Benjamin? Benjamin and Joseph's parents were who? Or mother was who? Rachel. So Joseph and Benjamin, they're treated differently by the other brothers, right? Because their mother was the favorite wife, right? Doesn't trust the brothers. Doesn't trust the brothers. So they met Joseph. Did the brothers recognize Joseph? Yes or no? No. Did Joseph recognize the brothers? Yes. Why do you think the brothers did not recognize Joseph? Why do you think? And it does remind you of the disciples, right? Not recognizing Jesus. Why do you think the brothers did not recognize Joseph? Maybe Egyptian makeup, maybe. And he definitely has on royal clothing. This might be the biggest, most powerful nation in the world right now. And he is dressed like royalty right now, right? And the last time they saw Joseph, they had just taken off his coat and sold him into slavery, right? Right. Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a while. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, and then they assume he's dead, so in their mind he's dead, right? or he's just a slave, some lowly slave somewhere. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point too. Because of Joseph's elevated position, the brothers have to do what? They have to bow down. What dream did Joseph have that they were going to bow down to him? Remember the dream? Right, this is the first dream. Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf. Okay? Because they all laughed at him, right? This is a dream, this is a prophecy, but they didn't really believe it. But now it's come true, and it's going to come true many times. Many times they're going to have to bow down to him. This is Genesis chapter 37, verse 3. Verse 7, yes. Thank you. Not verse 3, verse 7. Verse 9, what does Joseph accuse them of being? Spies. Okay? Spies. You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land. Okay? So nakedness means like undefended. So Egypt is in a vulnerable place right now, right? Because there's a famine, no food. And so Joseph is pretending that they're spies, and they're here to show how weak Egypt is for a foreign army to come invade, right? Why do you think Joseph accused them of being spies? Why do you think? Does he really think they're spies? Well, he knows they're his brothers. So does he really think they're spies? No. Why did he accuse them of being spies? Yeah, he's got some plans for them, right? He's got some. The tables have turned, and so now he's got plans for them. He's got his revenge or punishment or whatever you have. He's got ideas. They argue back and forth. Joseph then tests them to make sure they're not spies. He wants to see the younger brother, Benjamin. And so he keeps one of the brothers while the others bring grain to Jacob. Then they are to bring Benjamin back to Joseph. And if they don't do it, they lose the brother. Okay? And so how about Johan, do you mind reading this page?
Then they said to one another, in truth we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul. When he begged us and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. And Reuben answered them, did I not tell you not to sin against the Lord? But you did not listen. So now there comes the reckoning for his blood.
Yeah, the reckoning for his blood. So the brothers are feeling guilty, right? They're feeling convicted. They feel like they still feel guilty. They think that now they're being punished. God is punishing them for what they did. What did they do, by the way? Everyone knows this, but what did they do? They sold. Yeah. They sold him into slavery, right? For, I think, maybe 20 pieces of silver. Yeah, they initially tried to kill him, but then they wanted to get. If they killed him, they wouldn't get any money. So then they sold him into slavery. Joseph did hear the conversation because there was an interpreter between them. And Joseph turned away from them and wept. And this is important because this is something Joseph does a lot. Joseph wept. He took Simon from them and bound him before their eyes. So he takes Simon and binds them. And so if they ever want to see him again, they've got to come back with Benjamin. Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain and to replace every man's money in his sack and to give them provisions for the journey. I assume the money was the money they spent buying grain. When brothers saw that the money had been put back, they panicked and said, "What is this God has done to us?" Okay, so the money that they used to buy grain was put back into their sacks. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Joseph put the money that they spent buying grain, after they got the grain, Joseph put the money back? Why do you think that is? Why do you think? This is not easy. And there's many different interpretations of this. So I'll give you mine, but why do you think they put the money back? Why do you think Joseph gave them their money back?
It's a trick because he wanted to accuse them to steal.
He will be accusing them later of stealing. That's true. It could be a trick. It also could be, now Patricia might be right. It also could be, the way I like to think of it is, it's as if they sold, Benjamin. Sorry. Who did they sell into slavery?
Joseph.
No. Who's the, who did they bind? Simon. It's as if they sold Simon into slavery, right? So I think Joseph is kind of making them feel very guilty. Like they just sold another brother into slavery.
Oh, because Simon was kept.
So Simon is kept, and then they're given money. And so I think I think Joseph is saying, remember what you did to me? I could be wrong though, and Patricia could be right because they are going to do that later, aren't they? All right. So.
Money that came from the grain was used to
Right, and then
sell the brother Simon again.
so the money they spent to buy grain is put back into their sacks. And so they might be thinking, why did the money be put back? Maybe it's because it's the money for Simon. He's a slave. He's now a slave. But when they go back to Jacob, Jacob is upset too but Jacob probably thinks it's a trick. Anyway, they went back to Jacob and told him what happened. The father was also afraid that the money was still there. And there was an argument to decide whether they should try to get Simon back or now allow Benjamin to leave. So they've lost Joseph. Now they have lost Simon. Simon is a slave in Egypt. And now Jacob is trying to decide whether or not they're going to risk Benjamin going as well. Because right now they're down 2 brothers. So if you were Jacob, what would you do? If you were Jacob, what would you do? Would you allow Benjamin to go and 10 other brothers to go back to Egypt? What would you do? As a father, Johan, what would you do? All eyes are on you, Jacob. Anyone know what they would do? Who would go with Benjamin? Jacob. Oh, Jacob. He's very old though, but yeah, maybe. Okay. So I can see. I want to see what happened. I want to see it. I don't trust you. And he does. He does. If you read chapter, I think it's 42. Jacob does blame them for Joseph. He said, first, he does blame them for what happened to Joseph. I don't know the whole story. I don't know if he blames them because they were incompetent or if he thinks that something else happened. We don't really know. Chapter 43. We're going to go a little bit fast. We do have to cover about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We do have to go through 9 chapters today. Jacob again wants the brothers to buy food in Egypt. So they had decided pretty much, no, we're not going to go. We're not going to risk Benjamin. But now they're hungry again.
Simon was
And-
staying in the prison the whole time.
What?
Simon.
Yeah, Simon just stayed there. Simon was a slave. Yeah, stayed in Egypt. So, Taiwanese people, you would understand this. Taiwanese people would understand this, right? You decide not to do it, but then you get hungry. I understand this. Now, if it was McDonald's, I would definitely be.
Yes.
Jacob does not want to bring Benjamin, but the brothers are afraid to go without Benjamin, because if they go without Benjamin, they think Joseph is going to kill him, although they don't know who Joseph is. Judah pledges his safety. Judah will accept the blame forever if anything happens to Benjamin. Okay. Verses 12 through 15, Jacob allows Benjamin to leave. He sends the brothers with choice fruits for Joseph. They are to take double the money. They are to return the money that was put into their sacks. Jacob thinks it might have been a mistake. Joseph wants to eat with them at noon. The brothers are worried. This is what Patricia was saying earlier. The brothers are worried that the money being replaced will be an excuse to assault them, make them slaves, and take their property. They talk with Joseph's steward. The steward assures them that there is no problem and brings Simon out to them. And by the way, a lot of Joseph's servants are very godly. So Joseph has really made an impression with God in Egypt. And a lot of the people are very godly at this point. Verse 24, they talk about God, the greatness of God. The brothers entered into Joseph's house. There they had their feet washed, their donkeys were fed. And when Joseph came home, they gave him a present and again bowed down to him. And they talked about Jacob and they talked about Benjamin. And the Egyptians had a weird ritual. The Egyptians were not allowed to eat with Hebrew people. I'm not sure why that is. But so the Egyptians ate alone and the Hebrew people ate alone. And then Joseph hurried out. Hi, Ruby. Hey. Then Joseph hurried out, for his compassion grew warm for his brother. So Joseph, especially it says for Benjamin, Joseph is talking to Benjamin. Benjamin does not know who Joseph is. Joseph knows who Benjamin is. Joseph has a special heart for his brother. And Joseph has to run away. And he has to enter his chamber and weep there. And by the way, Joseph keeps crying when he sees Benjamin, when he sees his brothers. What does that remind you of, Joseph crying? What does that remind you of? What does it remind you about Jesus? Shortest verse of the Bible. Jesus wept. When I was in Sunday school, when I was a kid, and I would go to the church occasionally, and we had to memorize Bible verses, that was the one that everybody wanted. Jesus wept. And then we're done. We can leave. The small group leader would say, you can't leave unless you memorize one verse. And then that would be can we just say Jesus wept? And then it was like, fine, get out of here, you know. Of course, why did Jesus weep? He had compassion. He didn't feel compassion for Lazarus. Lazarus was dead, and he was about to resurrect him. He had compassion because why? He was grieved because he saw the effect of sin. Everyone's crying. Lazarus was a very honorable, well-loved man, and he's dead. and he sees the funeral. He sees everyone, well, maybe not the funeral, but he sees everyone mourning and everyone upset. And Jesus weeps because he sees the effect of sin coming into the world. And of course, God has every right to judge men for their sin, but God also has compassion. God has compassion because how much pain that sin causes us every day. Joseph suspiciously gives Benjamin for his food 5 times as much as any of his brothers. So they're eating with Joseph, but Benjamin's portion is 5 times greater. And so they don't know why that is, but we know why that is. Okay. That's his, that was, they had the same mother. Same mother.
And he was not a part of killing them.
Joseph fills their sack with food and money, even Joseph's silver cup in the sack of Benjamin. Okay, this is just funny. Okay, there's no way I know. It must have been terrifying for them, but for us, this is very funny. At least it's funny to me. So Joseph puts the food in their sack, which is what they paid for, fills their sacks with money again, and puts Joseph's silver cup into the sack of Benjamin. Remember, Benjamin's the one they're supposed to keep alive. When they left, Joseph's steward overtakes them. The brothers say, "Whichever of your servants is found with Joseph's cup shall die." So the brothers no one because they don't realize this is a setup. And so the brothers think they're innocent. Okay, whoever you see with the cup let them be dead. Let them die. Yeah, we didn't steal anything. So where was the cup found? Benjamin's sack, the one brother that they're supposed to keep alive. That the father says, well, we didn't talk about it, but the father says if something happens to Benjamin, he's going to go down to Sheol. So the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, and all the brothers, all of them, tore their clothes. This is not good. And it's really hard. This is really hard to read this without laughing. And Joseph said he will take Benjamin to be his slave. And the other brothers plead Joseph for Benjamin. Judah, who pledged his life for Benjamin earlier, is now asking to replace Benjamin as a slave. Wow. Judah has improved. When I read the story, Judah really kind of reminds me of Jacob. Starts off, well, he's very sinful. Starts off very sinful. Judah's more sinful than Jacob, though. But now he is amazingly, he asked to be replaced by Benjamin as a slave. That's pretty good. This is the same person, by the way, who had a child by his daughter. Daughter-in-law. Or was his daughter-in-law? Yeah, his daughter-in-law. Anyway. Joseph, I think this is the 3rd time, Joseph began crying again and made everyone leave except for his brothers. He cried so loud that many people, including the Pharaoh's household, heard his cries. And then he revealed that he was in fact Joseph and asked if his father was still alive. In verse 5, have we missed any of these things? No. Verse 5, "And now do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life." And Joseph has really humbled himself over the years. And he just says, don't be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me into Egypt. Because Joseph can look at the positive. For God sent me here before you to preserve life. He's very optimistic God, if I wasn't here, I wouldn't be able to preserve the life of my brothers, my family, preserve the life of the Egyptians. And then verse 8, so it was not you who sent me here, but God. And then verse 9, Joseph tells them to dwell in the land of Goshen so that he can take care of them. And this is a further completion of God's promise to make them a great people. Joseph fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept. He kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. Then they talked. The Pharaoh even gives them the best land in Egypt, and he gives them wagons for going back to Jacob. So now they're going to go back to get Jacob, and the Pharaoh even gives him official wagons. And by the way, this is Goshen. This is Goshen today. So it's not much to look at. Egypt is the desert is very beautiful though, in its own way. Not if you're kind of like you like life and vegetation, but the desert is beautiful in its own way.
But wasn't Goshen actually a green place? A very good pasture land at that time. That's why it's like the best land in Egypt. He picked the best land in Egypt to give them.
Well, it might be different climates are better for different things. It might be perfect for growing grain. I couldn't find a lot of pictures on Goshen. Well, I didn't look very hard.
Well, this is nowadays, but like I'm thinking back then.
Yeah, it could have been different. Maybe. All the brothers received a change of clothing, but Benjamin got special. He got 5 changes of clothing and 300 shekels of silver. When Jacob hears what had become of Joseph, he doesn't believe them at first. Then he believes and wants to see Joseph before he dies. Jacob's primary concern. He never thinks, "Oh, good, he's rich, we'll be wealthy." Jacob's primary concern is seeing Joseph before he dies. You can tell Jacob has a deep, deep love for Joseph, and it's very sweet when you read the story. And they normally call him Jacob. They normally don't call him Israel, but sometimes they do call him Israel. Jacob came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. Okay, so this finding out that Joseph was still alive makes him want to offer sacrifices to God. Of course, Beersheba has been mentioned many times in Genesis so far. Okay. Mila, would you like to read the page? Okay. So God is still speaking to Jacob. The rest of the chapter mostly includes everything and everyone Jacob brings with him to Egypt. Okay. Jacob brings a lot of things to Egypt. In verse 28, then Joseph and Jacob finally meet. Joseph falls on his neck and weeps for a long time. And Jacob says, "Now let me die, since I have seen your face and know that you are still alive." It's very sweet. Chapter 47, only 4 more chapters. Chapter 47, Jacob met and blessed the Pharaoh. I love the way that Jacob talks, because Jacob kind of talks like an old man. Like he doesn't really care, he just says it like it is. The Pharaoh asked him how old he was, and Jacob answered, "The days of my years and my sojourning are 130 years. few and evil have been the days of the years of my life. 130 years, few and evil have been the days of the years of my life. Anyway, he sounds like some old guy who just, he doesn't care if he's talking to the Pharaoh or not. He's just going to tell you the way it is.
Which verse is it?
It's chapter 47,
Oh, it's verse 9.
verse 9. Is that it? Okay. The famine was very great. After the Egyptians gave away all their money for grain, they gave away all their animals. Joseph allowed that. Then they sold themselves and all their land to the Pharaoh for seeds, but not the priests. When Jacob lived 147 years, he spoke to Joseph. Okay, Patricia, you wanna read this page?
And when the time drew near as Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, If now I have found favor in your sight, push your hands on your land, and lead and promise to deal kindly and truly with me, do not bury me in Egypt.
Okay, Chiaki, you wanna read verse 30 through 31?
Let me lie with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me in your burial place. He answered, I will do as you have said.
Joanna, you wanna read verse 31?
And he says, First me and restore to him Israel God is upon the head of his
All right, so where does Jacob want to be buried? In Canaan, right? Why? Why does Joseph want to be buried in Canaan? Promised land, right? That's the land that God gave him. So Abraham died there. Isaac died there. Jacob wants to be buried there with the promised land, the land that God gave his people. Joseph brings his two sons to see Jacob. So this is going to be very similar to what happened with Jacob and Esau and Isaac. Joseph brings his two sons to see Jacob. Jacob's eyes are not very good at this time. And Jacob says, Ivy, could you read verse 15?
He blessed Joseph and said, God before him, my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my
Shepherd?
shepherd all my life, known to his name.
Okay. Annabelle, you want to read verse 16?
The angel who has redeemed me from all evil, blessed the voice, and in them let my name be carried on, and the name of my father, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth.
No, you're good. Sorry. So, that's what he said. So Jacob put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, Joseph's second son. Joseph wanted Jacob to put his right hand on Manasseh's head, his first son. What does that remind you of? Reminds you of Jacob and Esau. It's the same thing that happened. Jacob, again, the younger son will become greater than the older. And so, what does Ephraim, does anybody know what happens with Ephraim's descendants? One of their descendants is Jeroboam, the first king of the northern kingdom of Israel. So Ephraim definitely becomes more important than Manasseh. Anyway, maybe this is a little bit too... Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather yourselves together that I may tell you what shall happen to you in the days to come." Okay, this is chapter 49. And so in chapter 49, Jacob is going to kind of say, this is what is going to happen to all the brothers. Okay, so Judy, could you read this page?
Samuel and listen, O sons of Jacob, listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the first fruits of my strength. Created in dignity and permanent power.
Julie or Julia? Julia, could you read verse 4?
Unstainless water you shall not have preeminence, because you went up to your father's bed, and you defiled it. You went up to my.
All right, so what is he talking about? What is he talking about? What did Reuben do? Chapter 35, verse 33. While Israel lived in the land, Reuben went and lay with Balaha, his father's concubine, and Israel heard of it. Okay? So, right, Reuben defiled the father's bed, and so now he's getting a curse. So now his people will not be as important as other brothers. Okay. Ruby, could you read this page, please? Simon? Okay. Johan, could you read this page?
And in their willfulness they hamstring much. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel.
All right, another curse, right? What did Simon and Levi, why are they being cursed? What did they do? What did they do when their sister was kidnapped? They destroyed the city, right? Yeah. And so it's finally coming back to bite them. They slaughtered all the men in the city, and now their descendants will not be very important. They'll be divided and scattered in Israel because of their anger. Okay? Okay, verse 8. How about Mila? Would you read this page? Lions Club. Hi, Patricia. Could you read this page? And Chiaki, could you read the last little bit?
He has washed his garments in wine and his vesture in the blood of ravens. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk.
So Judah surprisingly gets a good blessing. I thought Judah was going to get it, when you read this, because Judah was chiefly responsible to selling his brother into slavery. He sinned, so he repented. Apparently he was like Jacob. He repented, he turned, and I think mostly this is pointing to primarily to David, King David, who will be very important, and then who else? Jesus, right? Jesus is in Judah's line. Okay. Now we're going to go through, some of these people are not as important. Zebulun shall dwell at the shore of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall be at Sidon. Issachar is a strong donkey crouching between the sheepfolds. The prophecy ends with him becoming a servant. Dan shall judge his people. Gad will be raided by raiders. Asher's food shall be rich. Naphtali will be a doe let loose that bears beautiful fawns. Okay, so a lot of these are really good. Some of them are not so good. Okay, Joanna, could you read this, please? This is Joseph's. Of course, it's going to be good. Okay, Ivy.
Yet his arms were never being drew by the hands of the mighty one of Jacob. For there is the shepherd of the stone of Israel.
Annabelle. And Judy.
Blessings of your father are mine beyond the blessings of my parents, up to the boundaries of the everlasting hills, and hid me on the head of Joseph, and on the brow of him who was set apart from his brothers.
So very good, very 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 good. He probably has one of the best judgments from Jacob. It also talks about Benjamin. So little poor Benjamin, who is always so vulnerable. Benjamin becomes a ravenous wolf, in the morning devouring the prey and at evening dividing spoil. So Benjamin's descendants will be aggressive warriors, which is surprising. So in verse 28, Jacob commanded them to be buried in the field of Ephron the Hittite. Where do we get the field of Ephron the Hittite from? I'll give you a hint. Abraham. Abraham bought it for who? Sarah. Okay. Okay, last chapter. This is only going to be a little bit. Last chapter. Jacob is embalmed, and the Pharaoh allows Joseph to leave and to bury his father in Canaan. After Jacob died, the brothers were afraid Joseph would have his revenge. So they said before Jacob died, he commanded Joseph to forgive his brothers. I'm pretty sure. What do you all think? I'm pretty sure Joseph's brothers just made this up. I'm pretty. They said, "Oh, we talked with Jacob before he died. He said you need to forgive us." Anyway, and so this is what Joseph said. Julia, could you read the page, please?
But Joseph said to them, "Do not fear, for I am in the place of God. For am I in the place of God? As for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today. So do not fear, I will provide for you and your little ones." Thus he comforted them and spoke kindly to them.
Okay, so this is one of the most important verses in the whole Bible, in the whole book of Genesis. Joseph says, "Do not be afraid. Am I in the place of God?" What does he mean by that? I'm not. God says what? God says that we are not to judge people, do not have wrath. Vengeance is the Lord's.
Well, I think also at that time, like, brothers were kneeling down before him as if he's God, like prostrating, right? Like, we are your slave.
Well, that's kind of the, but that they did that because they didn't want to be killed. They're like they were doing that, but am I in the place of God? And then he says, and this verse is a verse of God's sovereignty. You meant it for evil. So what they did was they did want to do something evil and get away with it, but ultimately God is in control of all of it. God meant it for good. And so because they did that, many people were kept alive because Joseph was able to feed many people.
It's like Judas. Judas meant it for evil to betray.
Exactly. Yeah, you need a Judas. Like, yeah. No, Judas is going to be punished for what he did, but ultimately God was in control of all of it. Okay. And so Joseph lived 110 years. He made his brothers swear that they will move his bones, just like Jacob, move his bones. Well, this is from Egypt back to Canaan, and then he died. So he makes sure his brothers, when he dies, move his bones back to Canaan to be buried with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Okay? Are there any questions?